All of a sudden, Donkey Kong has become all the rage again. When it comes to popularity, it's always been an up and down journey for Nintendo's iconic gorilla. And after a long hiatus, the franchise got its latest comeback on Switch 2, with the first big single-player flagship title for the platform, even before Zelda or a new Mario solo adventure. It's ironic, the original DK arcade machine, which is one of the most iconic cabinets of all time, besides the likes of Pac-Man, pretty much made Nintendo the developer we know today. But as Super Mario took on a life of his own, for some reason they never quite knew what to do with the eponymous ape after that. And during that up and down, one of the series' best titles has fallen off the radar. In 1994, British developer Rare was allowed to reinvent the character on the Super Nintendo with Donkey Kong Country, a more traditional side-scroller with a tough difficulty and a more moody presentation. It became the first big comeback of the sub-franchise, a rightful classic, but its huge success at the same time overshadowed another Donkey Kong game released in that same year for the Nintendo Gameboy. Simply called Donkey Kong, these days referred to by fans as Donkey Kong 94, at first glance looks like a port of the arcade game, similar to other iterations like Dr. Mario, which were boiled down for the monochrome Game Boy hardware. But DK94 went way beyond. Despite being often overlooked, it's low-key one of the most tightly designed Nintendo games ever made. The first couple of stages known from the arcade barely constitute a short tutorial. After that, it boasts dozens and dozens of unique levels which build on the best parts of the first Donkey Kong cabinet, as well as the climbing gameplay of Donkey Kong Jr., while putting a new spin on both of these gameplay styles. In the original Donkey Kong, Jumpman, aka Mario, is a little more fragile than usual, and within the stages you might need to think a bit more about your jumps. DK94 retained this more careful approach by focusing on small rooms where platforming had to be more precise and came with slight puzzle solving in between the faster paced Donkey Kong battles where anything can kill off Mario pretty easily. However, the developers took character control to the next level. In fact, considering the hardware the game was made for, these controls remain incredibly fluid. They stand head and shoulders above the stiff acrobatics of the original, and arguably they're even still on par with any modern Mario game, thanks to multiple somersaults and double jumps reminiscent of later titles like Mario 64. And that one handstand move is still exclusive to this game. Even with just a D-pad, it feels shockingly intuitive to pull off these maneuvers, with which you can practically breeze through the first handful of arcade levels within a minute. Just beware, it isn't made for analog sticks. An entire series called Mario vs. Donkey Kong spun off from this title, but later iterations only cemented DK94 as a true classic, because the successor games were never able to recapture what made this first one so well designed. The first sequel came out on Game Boy Advance, later remade for the Switch, and focused more on the puzzle side of things. The actual Donkey Kong battles took a back seat and really weren't inventive at all. It also introduced a new Lemmings-like element where players guided small robots through obstacle courses. That mechanic later became the focus of the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series, which I found pretty forgettable. I assume I wasn't alone, because in mainstream reception, these games never really took off. While the original Game Boy Advance title and the Switch remake remain decent puzzle games, the character controls don't shine as much anymore, because the puzzle elements outweigh the platforming. In contrast, DK94 had a few head scratchers too, but found a much better balance between platforming and other gameplay elements. The Switch remake had the advantage of being attuned to modern analog sticks and not being reliant on a good D-pad, but again, the level design isn't nearly as tight as in DK94 in regards to platforming. Besides that, later titles would adopt that sterile toy aesthetic, whereas DK94 might be one of the last games built upon that old arcade look based on the original urban concept of Super Mario, which has mostly disappeared, aside from the occasional throwback. The game committed to that arcade vibe with urban backdrops, masterful sprite work, and classic characters like a big, chunky Donkey Kong. On Switch 2 they kinda went back to Donkey Kong's bigger design, but it still isn't quite like the original. DK94 also had many small touches that made it unique, such as short cutscenes which would teach mechanics in an entertaining way without being intrusive. Meanwhile, Mario vs. Donkey Kong became much more sterile. It had a pre-rendered look and was set in a more generic, playroom-style world, which was just lacking in charm. Even in the remake, which polished the graphics up, but not the art direction itself. Donkey Kong 94 is timeless, as long as you play it with good emulation. It looks as good as a Game Boy game can, and as we all know, the best sprite work really doesn't age. The levels have a perfect bite-sized length with inventive puzzles and obstacle courses that are just challenging enough to make you want to mess around with the shockingly agile moveset. In reality, it doesn't have much in common with Donkey Kong Country or Donkey Kong Bananza, but that's also kind of the point. Other arcade formulas like Pac-Man or Space Invaders have often received flashy new iterations, but no one else really iterates on the very specific arcade formula of the Donkey Kong machine, or Donkey Kong Jr. for that matter. And Nintendo's own Mario vs. Donkey Kong sub-franchise was also too unfocused to really leave a mark. Which means that DK94 stands as the peak of its own formula, and of a very specific old school era of Nintendo which has kinda gone missing.